Welcome to Public Safety Talk Radio, the podcast for all of our heroes in public safety, including law enforcement professionals, firefighters, EMTs, corrections officers, healthcare workers, and more. This show is produced by the POCUA and is founded upon its Soundness initiative. This episode is also sponsored by the POCUA, a consortium of financial institutions serving law enforcement, as well as other first responders and public safety professionals. Always remember, if you aren't banking with a POCUA credit union, you're just working with an institution that just so happens to serve public safety professionals, and you deserve better. Hi, I'm Ken Bader, your host for Public Safety Talk Radio, and I have another great guest. His name is Joe Devlin, and I want to tell you just a little bit about him. He is a respected behavioral health expert, more than 20 years of experience in the specialty of drug and alcohol recovery and treatment. Joe's professional experience includes clinical director, interventionist, professor, facility director, easy for me to say, addiction counselor, counseling supervisor, case manager, care manager, treatment facilities auditor, steward of county and state funding for treatment facilities, utilization reviewer, and family group decision-making facilitator, and partridge in a pear tree. I've literally got 3 more paragraphs here. I could talk about how great Joe is, and most importantly, the expertise that he's going to bring to the show. But Joe, welcome to the show. Let's talk.
Yeah. Ken, thanks so much for having me on the show today. This is it's a privilege, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I was looking forward to having you on the show all week. I know that you bring a lot of good insight, coupled with the unfortunate fact that I know that a lot of our brothers and sisters in public safety, whether they be firefighters, nurses, law enforcement, corrections officers, and so forth, do have a tendency to deal with this problem. So I definitely want to get to your story, as well as some tips and ideas of what they and families could do in that situation. But the number one question I have for you right now, and those that are on the video will see this, those that are on the audio, I'll explain that there is a big brick wall behind Joe. And I just want to make sure that we're not, in a sequel to The Ring or anything. Nobody dropped you down a well or anything like that, did they?
Not currently, but I've definitely been in many wells, and I do know the way out. So if you need some directions, I'll help you out.
There you go. All right. I like that answer. I said I wasn't going to throw you a curveball, and I threw you a curveball. So you don't have any fingernails or anything hanging from those bricks. You can get out of there, no problem.
Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. I'm sure I'll have more bad jokes later on, but we'll try to keep them to a minimum. But first and foremost, I invited you to the show because of your expertise with addiction. But in that process, I found out that you're also a former EMT. So tell our first responder listeners out there your experience in that role.
Sure, absolutely. It was something that kind of just came about. I had some friends who had a really, one of my best friends, he was riding for an ambulance, and he was like, hey, you should really check this out. This is a lot of fun. And so I just kind of would listen to his stories, talk about it, and it was enough for me to say, hey, listen, let me pursue getting my EMT so that I could ride on the ambulance. And it was voluntary. It was strictly voluntary. Did it for about 2 years. And the only time we ever rode was at night. And we only wanted to do the night shift because, we were younger. We were in our early 20s, and we enjoyed the excitement that would happen at night.
That's interesting. I literally, right before we had a chance to talk here, I was listening to another podcast called Firefighter Deconstructed. Which was, I literally just started listening to it because I like to listen to other shows in this kind of genre and hear what they're doing. A great show, at least the first episode that I listened to. And one of the things that the first guest had mentioned, who was also an EMT, said that she had worked for a very large department and then went and worked night shift and saw a lot of things and everything, and then went to kind of more of a rural department. And basically, my words, not hers, she said she was bored. Like she needed more than just that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think that's why we did it. We actually, it was in Union, New Jersey, a place called Coleman's,
Okay.
and Union's kind of what it's like the borderline where you have some suburbs, but you also kind of have some action going on there. And so, yeah, I mean, and I love the guys that I rode with the same guys all the time. One of my buddies, he was a paramedic. So really, I often say is like, I just kind of, I stood back and I carried everybody's baggage. You know, those guys did the real work,
Yeah.
and they just kind of let me come along for the ride. So.
Can I take that defibrillator and put it back in the ambulance for you now that the real work is done? Or I'll try not to electrocute myself on the way back.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm just surprised that I was able to say defibrillator. I can't even say it now. I got it once, and yeah, now I messed it up. So anyhow, I'm not even gonna edit that out so my audience can know what an idiot I can be sometimes. But getting into a serious subject, unfortunately, a number of first responders, even nurses and other ER personnel, I know vicariously fall victim to addiction for one reason or another. And you've had your own struggle with addiction, which is one of the reasons why you've built this expertise. Can you share a little bit of your journey with addiction with us?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I was, I mean, I'll call myself an addict. I was an addict before I became an EMT. For me, there was a period of time in my life where, partying was fun. I enjoyed it. We had a good time, was out celebrating with people, having fun. And then it just got to a point where it wasn't fun anymore. And, was getting myself in trouble and still trying to figure all of that out. And some of the stuff I knew, some of the stuff I didn't know, like that I had a problem. For me, really, the first one, like I grew up thinking that like blacking out was getting drunk. So for anybody out there, if you're blacking out, no, that's not getting drunk. Like don't, that's bad. It's usually a good sign that you might have what I have. And so really what happened to me was I was out. I mean, we were kind of, partying on the weekends, and there was a night where I was at a party, was able to kind of get a lot of the booze for everybody, and just got really hammered and was going home. I don't really remember, but the police picked me up, and I got involved with some of the, like at that point in time, they say, hey, listen, you can either go this route of treatment, or we're going to come to court and we're going to do those things. So I chose the treatment center route. So at the age of 15, I went to my first treatment center. And with that, it also introduced me to the 12-step program. So, and I say is, things really churned even at that young age. I noticed a lot of things that I started learning a little bit more about who I was. I'm one of 7 children. So there's sometimes maybe you don't learn as much about yourself. You're able to rely on a lot of other people to do things. And sometimes you don't really get to know yourself, because one of the fun things about me is the fact that, like, I don't care if you call me Joseph, Joe, Joey, it doesn't really matter, because I'm number 5 in my house. So like if my dad was trying to correct us, he would just go through the list until he got to your name, and then that's the way it was. And the same thing would happen when I was in school, because by the time, a teacher would call me and I correct him maybe the first couple of weeks, but then it was like, it doesn't matter, call me by my brother's name, John, Jim, I'm going to respond because you're doing your best here. And so, but some of that, you just don't know that much about yourself. So, I stayed sober for actually 45 days, and I felt better, some of the cloudiness left and all that kind of stuff, but I just wasn't ready to give up. Like, I was like, look, I can't live the rest of my life not drinking, not partying. What's that going to look like? I mean, I'm too young for this. Yeah. And so I just kind of continued on that path. And, I think at 18, I tried to, kind of get sober a little bit, but that didn't really last that long. I took to heart what my uncle said, because I was kind of really spinning my wheels. And he said, hey man, find a job that you love to do and you'll never work a day in your life. So I became a bartender. And
that's great. As an admitted alcoholic, that sounds like a great job for an alcoholic. Yeah, good job, Joe.
Absolutely. So I was, I was on fire for it. Like, I loved it. It afforded me, afforded me income, afforded me to party, allowed me to do the EMT one night a week, like, because there's such a flexibility in all that stuff. And but however, the unfortunate thing is, I mean, I started bartending when I was the age of 20, and it was like for the next 15 years I was bartending, and but when you party the way I party,
Yeah.
you most certainly have to work. And so it was like it was working at that bartending job, and it was working keeping up with my addiction and what I was doing. And it's one of those things where it says, hey, listen, maybe I would have heard something differently from someone. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what it actually took, but all I know is that like I kept going, even though some seeds were planted along the way, which I'm really grateful for, because when I finally decided to get sober, some of the very things that I learned when I was 15 came to fruition.
Mhm.
So it's like I never knew what was going to be planted. And I used to say, oh, hey man, they're a bunch of whining maggots, I ain't going back there. And today, like that was part of my story, and how I got sober was through the use of the 12 steps. And I'm glad I knew it existed,
Yeah.
because without it, that definitely, I mean, I definitely would be dead at this point.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Couple of things. Yeah, I don't often talk about it. I'm not shy about talking about it, but I'm an alcoholic and I'm actively in AA. And one of the things that truly made me realize that I had a problem, because I knew, one of the jokes, and you've probably heard this before, and I think a lot of us addicts, we use humor
Yeah.
to help, yeah, maybe not repair us, but to kind of understand and heal a little bit, because like,
Yeah.
wow, you woke up in an alley, I woke up in a
Uh,
drunk tank, and so
yep.
it's that type of thing that only another addict would understand. But
Yes.
kind of the line is, which I identify with completely, is, when I was started drinking, it was fun. I had a lot of fun times. I
Mhm.
got a lot of fun stories, and then it became fun with problems, and then at some point it just became problems.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
one of those problems was blackouts.
Hmm.
Where I couldn't remember, what I did, what happened the night before. I'm looking for wallets, keys,
Yeah.
receipts, trying to piece together the evening. And when I got into AA, I knew something was wrong, but I tried to think to myself or talk myself into, all right, I got a problem, but maybe it's not alcohol. Maybe it's
Hmm.
something else. So
Yeah.
I took that test. And one of the things it said on that test, I remember, was almost exactly what you just said, which is, do you black out when you get drunk?
Yeah.
And basically it said, this is a pretty good sign that you're an alcoholic. I'm like, oh man, I don't even want to answer these other questions. So,
Yeah.
I think that, while some of these folks, first responders and other public safety professionals, might be thinking I'm okay, but I think that blackout, that part of your addiction is a real clue to, this isn't normal. This isn't what normal people do.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think, Ken, I mean, it's such a great point. And I think that sometimes it happens almost in bits and pieces too. Like, like if you early on, sometimes it was like, somebody would mention, hey, do you remember, doing this? And maybe that's at the 11 or 12 or the 1 to 2 hour, and you're
Yeah.
like, nah, I don't really remember seeing them come in, but you remember everything else from the
Yeah.
night. Like, so it's like it's almost like it starts it starts that closing that gap, so it starts a little bit at a time. And then I mean, if you've ever looked at your shades out of your house, kind of seeing if your car's there in the morning, yeah, warning sign. There's probably a problem there.
Yeah. Now, a word from our sponsor, the Police Officers Credit Union Association. The POCUA can suggest a credit union that serves public safety professionals in practically every state in the country. One state we definitely have covered is New York. The Finest Federal Credit Union is the only financial institution in New York State chartered specifically to serve the needs of all law enforcement personnel, uniform and civilian, retirees, and all family members. Chartered in 2015, the Finest Federal Credit Union evolved from the vision of a group of retired NYPD officers. They believe their fellow officers should receive the best financial services in the marketplace, services that are tailored to the special needs of our law enforcement community and affiliated departments. For more information about the Finest Federal Credit Union, go to www.thefinestfcu.org or call 646-661-8700. 1886. To find an institution to serve you in any of the other 49 states, go to www.policecreditunions.com. And always remember, if you aren't banking with a POCUA credit union, you're just working with an institution that just so happens to serve public safety professionals, and you deserve better. I know from reading a little bit about your story that you were in treatment 8 times before it really stuck. At least that's kind of how I understood it. And I know a lot of folks, some, it takes 2, 3, 4 times. For me, fortunately, it took once. I got into AA and it's working for me today. Tomorrow, maybe not, but I'll worry about tomorrow. Today, I can honestly say it's working for me, and it's my first time in. So is there any inclination as to why for some people it takes the first time and others it takes multiple times? Is it, the quality of the treatment? Is it the person? Is a combination thereof? Give us some insight into that.
Yeah, Ken, that I think you kind of covered it, because I think it does have a lot to do with that. I will say I work with a lot of what we call first time winners, right?
Yeah.
Folks who go in and they do it and boom, and they stay sober for the long haul. But you really hit on everything. I mean, I think the most common one that we always hear is, "Oh, is the person ready?"
Yeah.
Well, I know a guy who got sober just because he wanted a cup of coffee, right? And the only place that he could go was he went to AA and MA thing.
Yeah.
So and he wanted a warm place and he got a cup of coffee and the guy stayed sober. So I don't think he was really ready. Like, I don't think that like his
Yeah.
determination was there. But so anything can really happen with that. But and sometimes it is the treatment facility in which they go to. I do firmly believe in that. But I also think is that, like, we want to think about it is that, like, sometimes it's we're not giving ourselves enough chance to get sober. And by meaning by that is that I think so many times, families that I'm working with, they go to, hey, listen, they went to treatment, so they're going to be better. Well, what
Yeah.
did you do? You went away for 14 days or, I mean,
Yeah.
because it used to be you could do 28 and 30 days. If you get that now, I mean, that is just a miracle that that's actually happening. So you get 14 days and then maybe you do a couple outpatient, maybe you do that for 30 days or something. And the guy who's, usually like the person who's kind of going through the treatment, they don't want to go through the treatment anymore. They want to go do something. Hey, listen, I got this. I stopped putting the substance in my body. I feel better. Their mind is clearer after 30 days. That haze lifts. I mean, honestly, like, so if you have a substance abuse problem, when that haze lifts and you're like, whoa, wait a second, you start seeing colors a little bit brighter. Everything doesn't feel as smoky. Things seem to be a little bit larger. It's just, and so you go, hey, I'm good to go. And you never gave yourself that chance to really make those other changes, because part of this disease is the neural pathways that have been created in the brain, not only just the genetics, and we can go into the sociocultural stuff, but just from that same thing of just creating some new neural pathways in our brains. And if we're not working on that, I think it's an injustice to those who are going to treatment centers. So we need to get them connected and going.
I completely agree with you on that, Joe. First off, I'm really pissed that you can't get coffee at AA meetings anymore because of COVID-19. Yeah, I used to, even in the meetings, because as well as I do, some are great meetings, you really get something out of it. Others, just this one just didn't work for me, but at least I got a cup of coffee. Now I don't even get coffee.
And the best cup of coffee, because they're nice and strong.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody, all first responders out there, man, even if you don't think you have a problem, if you wanted a real strong cup of coffee for that midnight shift or going on the way to the ER,
Yep.
Go to a meeting, get some coffee, and then you're good to go. But you can't do that anymore. There's no freaking coffee. But back to something actually important. I truly believe that addiction, whether it's alcohol or drugs or sex or sniffing glue or whatever it is, gambling, whatever it is that you're going to do, that there's both a physical and a mental component. Because I know that after about 30, 40 days of being sober, physically I felt pretty damn good. I'm like, hey, this is nice. I can get up and not have to take 4 aspirin. I could actually feel like I could be productive. I
Yeah.
got a good night's sleep. I don't have to pop 2 Zantac anymore because I drank 2 bottles of red wine, or
Right.
whatever it is. Physically, but
Yeah.
mentally, I got to tell you, at least for me, I was angry as hell.
Hmm.
Because I think what some people don't realize is, just because you're physically sober, all these things that kind of fed your addiction,
Yeah.
haven't gone away. All those things that says, oh, and I remember, a firefighter even saying once, at one of the AA meetings, that before he got in AA, he would tell his colleagues, hey, you know what? If you saw what I saw, you'd
Yep.
be drinking the way that I drink.
Absolutely.
And the fact that he's physically sober doesn't take all those things away.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit more, maybe even from a first responder
Yeah.
standpoint, that mental aspect. Okay, you're feeling good, physically sober, but then now it's time to deal with that mental aspect of it. What really needs to happen there?
Sure. No, oh man, it's such a great point. I mean, and like I said, like we wrote at night, right? And there were certain things that really didn't bother me, like, and it was one thing I learned about myself. And I think anybody who's a first responder, you're wired a certain way that the things that normal people, the things that you see would destroy a normal person. I
Yeah.
mean, kind of much like, right, those guys in recovery, we joke about these things about where we woke up and what the hell we were doing. Whereas if we share it with other people, they're like, "You're freaking nuts. What are you talking
Yeah.
about?" So you get, as a first responder, like I remember, like I can remember it was early morning, a tractor trailer running over this guy in his car, and him just being all mangled and blood squirting out of him, and and all that kind of stuff. That didn't really bother me. That one didn't bother me all that much,
Yeah.
but then there was another one where I got a call, and we're going to this hotel late at night, and we get to the hotel room, the door is open, we're looking around, it's just me and my buddy, we're just riding solo, no cops, and we're like, okay, what's going on? Don't find anybody in the room. And then we're following this trail of blood outside, around the sidewalk, out to the front, behind these cars. We finally get to him and we see the guy bleeding out, so now we got to work on him. But
Yeah.
that one kind of stuck with me a little bit, and I couldn't say which one was worse or why did it
Yeah.
work that way. And so whatever that is, it's that's kind of that part of that mental thing that you talk about to address. Like, it's okay that one bothered you, and one of them might have sounded worse to somebody, or maybe it doesn't sound bad to you at all, right? You have your own thing that you were going through, so it's like, okay, how do I work on that? Because before then, it was drinking anyways, right? So it
Yeah.
just gave me another excuse. Hey, man, that was a great night. We saved this guy, or hey, did you see that guy? And boom, 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 and we're drinking through the night, and then we go on. But then I wake up with it the next morning, and then something just goes. Zzz, it just sits inside of me,
Yeah.
and if that's never addressed up here, when I get sober, that's the type of stuff that starts kind of coming in and coming out, and coming in and coming out, and so it's like, okay, how do I work on that, and who can I work on that with?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Trauma informed care is one thing that I spent over a year kind of working with a group of folks about that. And it is, it's real. And it's, we've, to tell you the truth, everybody in the world has experienced some level of trauma.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so whatever that point is, let's help you to get to the place where it's not saying you ever have to forget about it, but the fact that would get you to a place where you're safe moving forward. And so
Yeah.
that if that thought comes up, you know how to kind of deal with that.
Yeah, what might be your number one suggestion for any of our public safety professionals out there? Because these are strong people. I mean,
Oh
you
yeah.
can't freaking work in an ER room, or be walking a beat, or be running into a burning building without being a tough person. Emotionally, physically, psychologically. And I've seen some folks where they'll take, like you mentioned, 30 days, 45 days, and get physically sober and say, I
Mm,
just need to get away from this. But then they're dealing with the mental issues that make them want to open the bottle again, or go to their buddy's bar and have a few, or whatever that
yeah.
is. What is your suggest when somebody's at that point? What can they do to help themselves mentally?
Yeah. No, just again, great point. And because and to kind of look at it this way, it's not that's not a weakness that you went, like you said, you're very, very strong. First responders, love them. Got a lot of friends who are still first responders. They're amazing people. Hats off. We should do a heck of a lot more for them. And so you're so strong, right, that it's almost viewed as a weakness to not drink.
Yeah.
Or and it's like, oh, okay. But remember that, like, the drinking or the drugging, whatever it is, remember, that's your solution. So it's not your problem, it's your solution to
Hmm.
things. So kind of looking at it that way, kind of, let's like kind of flip the script there a little bit. And then the next thing is okay, so is it okay for me to talk to other people about this? And that's also a hard thing, right? Because we're supposed
Yeah.
to be strong, and the world teaches us we're supposed to handle as much as we can by ourselves, but we're really strongest when we're working with other people. It's the
Hmm.
very reason why people are first responders, is because they love to help people, right? They're always there, like, that's their heart. That's where they're at. However, it's accepting the helper and from other people is a really huge barrier to get over. So it's beginning by talking with somebody. I think is one of the beginning starting points. And there's different treatments out there, and there's different strategies out there that you can do. And I think that it really depends upon who you are to kind of look at them, to kind of pick out which one is best for you. But first off, just by beginning just to speak with somebody, I think
Yeah.
is to letting somebody in to know a little bit about you, because you're so good at taking care of everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, great point. And this is a good time just to mention, I mentioned this on the show a couple of other times, but for any first responders, healthcare workers that just need to talk to somebody and they want to talk to somebody anonymously, one of our partners at the POCUA is Serve and Protect out of Tennessee. They've got people 24/7 that are licensed, that some of them are former first responders that you could just talk to, so you don't feel like you
Yeah.
want to talk to your partner, you don't want to talk to your boss, superior, and get labeled or whatever your situation. You could talk to somebody for free, that'll just listen sometimes, and sometimes that's all you need.
Yep. And I think that is a great point. Like that, I love that service,
Yeah.
because it's just like, okay, let me, so it's a good try. You know what I mean? Just say, hey, listen, this has been bothering me. So you'd speak to him, and that's it. So you don't have to talk to anybody within your circle, shall we say, right?
Yeah.
But I would really encourage folks to, on top of that, is start out there, right? Get a feel
Yeah.
for that. The next one is, I mean, if you're having, it's kind of like if you're having a recurring dream or something, or something that's kind of coming up on you, look, that might be the only thing you need to address, is how to kind of work through what that is essentially is PTSD. Okay.
Hmm.
So it's keep coming back. So there's easy strategies out there. I mean, there's everything from EMDR to progressive counting that can just deal with that one instant. And you will see that when you address that, that could be the only thing that you needed to unlock
Hmm.
and then move on from, and then go. This doesn't have to be, I think a lot of times people think that they go into counseling or therapy, that it's going to be the next 40 years of my life, and I ain't doing it. Sometimes it can move that quickly.
Yeah, yeah, and not being a public safety professional, especially in this difficult time, I wouldn't completely understand it, but I would think that, whether you're a police officer getting, feces thrown at you during a riot, or an ER nurse, or ER professional having to deal with COVID-19, or,
Yeah.
firefighters. I remember talking to a firefighter with COVID-19 in New York when it was at the height of the pandemic, and he was saying, "This is a shit show out here." I mean,
Yeah.
this is like nothing else I've ever dealt with. I think that the times that we're in now, maybe ignorant to this, but I think that the times that we're in now lends itself to addiction, whether it be alcoholism, drugs, anything,
Yeah.
than any other time for public safety professionals.
I can't agree with you more. I mean, like, if you're talking about it being, the job itself is difficult enough. Now you
Yeah.
throw in how the the community is responding, right? Like rather than cheering our nurses and our doctors and our police officers and our firefighters, it's almost like they're under attack for helping.
Yeah.
And like, so that you induce that amount of stress. And so, I mean, it's no surprise right now we're seeing it's a 30% increase in addictions right now across the board since COVID started. And and I'm with you, like if it's hey, listen, okay, so hey, I used to make deals, like maybe I'd make a deal with God. Hey, God, help me through
Yeah.
this. I'll stay sober for 2 weeks. I'll stay sober for 30 days. I'll stay sober for 45 days. If you find yourself gravitating towards something else, whether it's be food or a lot of times the big thing is sex, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the pornography or anything that you kind of dig yourself into. If you're finding yourself kind of doing that, just remember that that's just you're just bouncing, you know what I mean? You're just kind of
Yeah.
playing, you're just playing a little different of a sport at the time, just a little different arena, but you're going to come back to your other arena at any time. So if you're seeing that, hey, look, this is another good time to say, hey, listen, I think let me talk to somebody. Let me talk to somebody anonymously. Because
Yeah.
that was one of my biggest fears. I mean, going back around, I wanted to make sure everything I did was anonymous. I didn't want anybody to know what I was doing, where I was doing it, how I was doing it,
Yeah.
and it can be done.
Yeah, well, I bounce from alcohol to Diet 7-Up. I've got like 2 cases sitting over here. So,
I didn't even know they
um,
made Diet 7 Up.
yeah, they do. It's good, man. My drink of choice used to be vodka soda with a lime. So the Diet 7-Up
Ah.
kind of is like, oh, this is kind of okay. Um, yeah, now I'm gonna reach out to whoever the hell makes Diet 7-Up. I think it's the Coca-Cola company that bought them or whatever, and say,
It's gotta be.
you owe me money for an endorsement
That's right.
because I just endorsed Diet 7-Up. Uh, but, yeah, be that as it may, there are a lot of first responders, healthcare workers that are dealing with addiction, that may or may not even truly realize that they have a problem. They're in it, but family members,
Yeah.
spouses, sons, daughters, cousins, mothers, fathers, truly can see it, and they're being affected by the disease, even though the individual with it doesn't realize it. Are there things that family members and close friends can do to really help this person? Especially, I mean, they always say, well, yeah, this person has to help him or herself, and I do believe that that's true. But is there anything that the family can do to kind of say, look,
Yeah.
we're in this together, type of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, no. Oh, what a great question. I mean, Ken's statistically right. 1 in 3 people are being affected by addictions.
Yeah.
So the reality is, it's somebody. It's you. It's somebody in your family. It's your next door neighbor. It's somebody you work with, right? Like, so you're around it, and if you're not aware of it, you're definitely around it. So the opportunity is going to present itself for you to be able to kind of interject and help. You know, and so one of the first things I think of when I think of family members, right? Like, so all of a sudden they find out like their son, their daughter has an addiction, and the first thing they do is blame themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I should have caught it. Should have known. And I just really would encourage you, if that's you, don't blame yourself.
Right.
There is nothing, zero, nobody. If you have what I got, there was zero thing my family could have said to me or done differently to have stopped this from happening.
Exactly.
So definitely it is not, it's not you. Um, the second thing is that if your loved one has what I got, look, man, they're walking around in a bunch of shame. And can you hit it was angry because they're angry at themselves because they can't stop it and they keep doing some stupid things, and it's just going to escalate until they get into more and more trouble. It's just the way it is. But remember that they're not waking up. Like, if they've got a problem, they're not waking up going, oh, this is awesome. They're waking
Yeah.
up pretty terrified, and they're hoping there's a way out. And there's definitely a way out, and there's a way to have solutions. And I'd say is this for the family member, the best thing you have is you have the relationship.
Yeah.
You have the relationship with that person. So that means that, like, they love you, even though they might not act it all the way, all the time.
Mm.
I talk about something called the compass of shame, and it's really how we respond to shame. And one of those things that we're used to fight or flight, but there's
Mhm.
avoidance and there's other things. But when people respond in shame because they're feeling bad about what they're doing, they attack you, right? Now, when somebody attacks me, a family member attacks me, I don't think, oh, well, they're feeling shameful, but
Yeah, you're like, son of a bitch. You're going to get in my face for it.
pretty much, right?
Yeah.
But if you can look at it just from the sense of your loved one, just kind of remembering that they're attacking you, and what it really does show too, though, at the same as odd as this may sound, is that you're actually a safe person for them, right? And which means that you hold a lot of their trust. So you can, by just having some simple conversations with them, like, hey, look, let us go take a look at an assessment,
Mhm.
and let's begin there. And if you get somebody moving to go have an assessment, win. That's great. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that they know that they have a
Yeah.
problem, and but by taking that relationship, and maybe, if it's your seventh time in treatment center, like their kids' the seventh time in the treatment center, just remember that you can say, hey, listen, I can no longer support you dying.
Yeah.
And that, I can tell you, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that just break the ice of a situation, because the person who was suffering knew they were dying.
Yep.
You kind of called them out on it, and it changes the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great point. And I think that particular statement, for some, it kind of takes them aback and gets them to a point of thinking, it's like, what do you mean? I ain't dying. I'm not the one with the problem. But I think that it's not being a professional myself. I think that it kind of shocks that individual into thinking in a different way.
Yeah, and it does, and I think it really it will. I like that. I like that word, shock. And the other piece of advice I would give is, don't do it to them while they're high or they're
Yeah.
drunk. That's going to get you nowhere.
Hmm.
The best time to get them is in the morning, or when they're trying to sleep. Like, get them, like, or they
Yeah.
just woke up, because they're feeling in that depressed and that shameful state, where they're thumbing through their phone, figuring out who they called, or grabbing receipts. They're doing all that stuff,
Yeah.
and that's when you get the chance to kind of talk with them, because they're going to be more receptive to hear you at that point, to be like, okay, they know what's going on. I know what's going on. And if they want to move and they say they want to change, go. Then don't wait.
Yeah.
Go. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent advice. It reminds me of the episode that we did with James McNeil, and you were talking to me about that a little bit before I pressed record, because we were all agreeing that Pam Dauber was very attractive and Mork and
Absolutely.
Mindy.
Absolutely.
But maybe I need to get Pam Dauber on the show with the Diet 7 Up. Maybe that'll work. But one of the things that he said was, James McNeil said, is that sometimes you need to piss people off, just to get them
Yeah.
into a state of action,
Yeah.
and not necessarily when they're high or drunk, or
Right.
in a what's the word I'm looking for, not proper state,
Yeah.
but when they are sober, when they are somewhat clear-headed, that may make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's the best time to do it. And, and I'll say this too, is that, like, I'd be remiss if I don't say this, but sometimes it's our coworker that we're working with, and
Yeah.
that we have a problem with, or that there's a problem and you don't know what to say. And I think one of the best things you can ever say to them is, hey, listen, I can say, yeah, hey, Ken, listen, man, I love working with you. You're awesome. You're right on spot. However, when you're out partying, like, I can't work with you like that anymore. We're going
Yeah.
to have to figure something out, and that could be going out somewhere or doing whatever. Because that, sometimes nobody really realizes that. I mean, I remember partying with friends, and, it was one of my roommates. And boy, I mean, this was when I was where, I was living in the house with a couple guys, and one of them was coming back from visiting his girlfriend, like up in Boston, and a buddy of mine, I was hanging out. I was like, "Oh man, we got to go grab some, booze. He's coming home," and he looked at me and he's like, he really doesn't like it when you drink because you get so out of
Yeah.
control. And I was like, "What?" I was like, "We drink every night."
Yeah.
So it took somebody else to tell me that,
Yeah.
where it kind of stuck in me, and it was like, and I'll never forget that conversation. So, and that's it. It's like when we have these relationships, remember, we're really meeting them, and in the only other word I can really think for is love. Like
Yeah.
we're not saying this thing like telling them that they're an asshole and that we're never ever going
Right.
to, you can't do anything, and this is but what we're saying is that, hey, look, I love, I love working with you,
Mhm.
man. I know when you're on point, you got my back, and I have no problems rolling on out with you. I'm confident. However, when I know you come in hungover, now
Not
all of a
so
sudden,
much.
not yeah, and that'll go a long way. That'll really speak to the heart of a lot of people.
Yeah. Joe, great advice. I can talk to you for another hour. But I know we both got other stuff to do, but I always reserve the right to bring you back.
Awesome.
But great insight. For those folks that could really use your help and your assistance, how can they best find you? In fact, I know you've got a book out there that can help a lot of people too.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'll say you can go to Joseph, B as in Bravo, Devlin.com. That's my website. So you can contact me. You can have my phone number, email me. I also wrote a book. It's called A Step Out of Darkness. And it's how to help someone enter addiction treatment and walk with them through recovery. I literally wrote it. I poured everything I had into it, was leveling the playing field for families so that they would know how to help somebody get into to get into treatment. So it's kind of a step-by-step guide, and then what to do with them after they go to treatment. That's even more important sometimes than just getting them into treatment. That's on Amazon. Cover looks like this, I think, if we can see it. And
for those of you that
we're
aren't
watching.
watching the video version but listening to the audio version, the cover is nice. So but if you look up Joseph B. Devlin on Amazon, I have a feeling you're gonna find it.
Yeah, you would definitely find it. And also, what I want to do is I want to put it out for any of your listeners. Like, after hearing this, if they hear this within 48 hours after it airs, I'm happy to send them a copy of the book for free.
Awesome.
I will send them a copy of that. My sole intention for this book, again, is to helping people understand how to help people get into treatment and walk with them through recovery. I think it's I can't tell you how many times I have to deal with, how many times I speak with a family member who's just crushed and they don't know what to do. So,
yeah, great. Very, very kind of you and great insight. I have enjoyed every minute talking to you, Joe. Thank you so much for being on the show.
All right. Thanks, Ken. Hey, listen, I hope you have a great day. I look forward to coming back.
I'm looking forward to having you back. If for no other reason, I want to have another conversation with you. But thank you again. It's been my pleasure. And thank you to all of you that have either watched or listened to this latest episode of Public Safety Talk Radio. And we will be back with you in about a week with another great guest. Public Safety Talk Radio is produced by the POCUA. POCUA is a consortium of financial institutions serving law enforcement as well as other first responders and public safety professionals. To learn more about our association and to find one of our credit unions or service providers near you, go to www.policecreditunions.com. And always remember, if you aren't working with one of our POCUA credit unions, you're just banking with an institution that just so happens to serve first responders. As a public safety professional, you and your family deserve better. Find a POCUA credit union today.